Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of this legislation, and I want to thank Chairman Smith of the Ways and Means Committee for all of the good work he's done to ensure that we're able to help our constituents who are suffering as a result of natural disasters, and to my colleague and friend, Mr. Stubbe, who, without his leadership on the Ways and Means Committee, we wouldn't be here today. And also Mr. LaMalfa, my colleague to the north of my district, who has worked with me over the years to address one component that is covered by this piece of legislation. This has been a long time coming for my constituents, too long, way too long. This is now the second time in 5 months that this House has come together to state plainly and in bipartisan fashion that Americans should help one another when disaster strikes. And while the Senate continues to play politics with what ought to be a bipartisan victory, they've been sitting on the tax bill for 5 months. And I join Chairman Smith in calling for them to move the entire bill, because there's so much in that for so many of our constituents across the country. And I just want to briefly reiterate how we got here today. In my district, wildfires in 2015, 2017, and 2018 devastated entire communities across my district and across the state of California. Entire towns were destroyed. Thousands of people lost homes. Dozens of people lost their lives. In the aftermath, the courts found that Pacific Gas and Electric was liable for causing some of these fires. As part of its subsequent bankruptcy proceedings, the utility established a trust from which fire survivors are generally eligible for compensation for losses sustained during these fires. Let me pause here to say one thing. No disaster survivor is ever made whole. No one is ever made whole. People lost their homes and everything in their homes, family pictures, family heirlooms, family records. They lost businesses, and as I said earlier, sadly, they lost family members. And while the courts eventually created a path to compensation, it took years to get there, years my constituents didn't have. They couldn't wait around for 3, 4, 6 years to get a payment from that trust. And then, because the trust was structured in the form of stock shares, and because stock shares need to be monetized carefully and slowly in order to maximize return to survivors, the payments to survivors came in batches. Nobody is getting, nobody is getting 100% of what they lost. And then, to add insult to injury, right as our constituents started to get even a little bit of compensation, our constituents are told they may actually owe taxes on these payments, because depending upon the taxpayer, the payments may qualify as income. In 4 years of working on this issue, I have yet to encounter a single person on either side of the aisle who believes this is fair. That's why we've been so successful in passing this legislation numerous times out of the Ways and Means Committee and off the floor of this House. This bill has been stalled, advanced, then held up. It's been marked up, passed the House, and stalled again. The Senate ought to quit dithering on what's an objectively good bill for our country and just pass it. But because they are unwilling to do so, we're here again tonight to take this matter up. I'm grateful, as I said, to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Neal, our ranking member on Ways and Means, has been a great colleague and a great champion for this. The chairman, Mr. Smith, and as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Stubbe, one of our colleagues on the committee. I wish such an unusual strategy to get here wasn't necessary, but I'm committed, and I think my colleagues here are committed to pulling every lever at our disposal to get this bill passed. This is a fundamental question of fairness, and I urge all my colleagues to vote in favor of this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.